Ready is relentless. Ready is fearless. Ready is fearing no foe. Ready for the next level? Renew your season ticket now and support Rangers into season 2021. Prices are frozen for next season and the renewals deadline is extended. Visit rangers.co.uk/renew to secure your season ticket today. Always Rangers. Always loyal.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the 4LadsHadADream podcast. My name is Stevie Clifford, I'm your usual host, and this is a very special podcast as we look at the career and speak to Mr. Gavin Rae. Gavin had a very successful career at Dundee before joining Rangers, and then on to Cardiff before going back to Dundee, Aberdeen, then back to Dundee again. Gavin was part of the Scotland side that won the Guen Cup back in 2000s. And he also was part of the Cardiff City squad that got to the FA Cup final. So before we talk to Gavin, let's welcome our regular co-host. He is the chief sports writer at the Herald and Glasgow Times Group, Mr. Chris Jack. Chris, thanks for joining us. How are you?
No problem at all, Steve. Good to be back on again. Looking forward to this one. Nice to get a chat with Gavin and see how life is in these difficult times.
He's certainly got an interesting story. From Scottish Cup finals to Cardiff Cup finals, with Cardiff FA Cup final rather. So he's certainly got a lot to talk about. Even the Guen Cup victory for Scotland.
I remember it fondly.
Yeah.
How many years ago was that now? 2003, 4 that victory?
I want to say it's 2004, so I'll look forward to Gavin telling us all about it.
He can. My details, memories of it are somewhat sketchy, so he can hopefully fill us in on it.
So, without further ado, joining us is Mr. Gavin Rae. Gavin, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's great. Thanks for giving up your time. We know you're out in Australia now. You're currently a manager out there. How's things going on out in Australia with everything that's going on?
Yeah, good. You know, been here for, obviously, I'm coaching part-time and I work full-time. So yeah, no, it's been a total change from when I left Scotland, but it's been really enjoyable. Is
it right that you work in accounts and you've got a degree in things? Did I read that right?
No, not so. I work in technology consulting.
Right.
So I basically run a small and been doing that for about 2 years. Got into sort of tech recruitment when I came out, and then from there have sort of moved on to this, which has been good. It's been good fun.
So as we kind of look back, obviously you had a very successful career with times at Dundee, times at Rangers, a good spell down in Cardiff and things like that, highlights, including the FA Cup final, Scottish Cup final, and even a Guen Cup win with Scotland. So we're going to try and cover it all, but the first thing we would probably ask, and we ask everybody, is who is your early heroes and early inspirations in football growing up?
You know, I grew up obviously in Aberdeen when they were, you know, doing really well in the 80s. Willie Miller was a big hero. Alan McLeish obviously became the manager at Rangers as well and brought me. So that was obviously a big highlight in my career as well. And Jim Bett, who played for both, who was a great player. That's the sort of players that, you know, when I was growing up were fantastic.
Yeah, and certainly a Rangers connection there, which would form a huge part of your career later on. Can you tell us a wee bit about your early football experiences through the youth stages before you went to Dundee and started your career there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I don't know like how much people know about my sort of early career, but I was definitely a late developer. You know, I came from a school and an area who had a lot of really good players that went to obviously loads of different clubs. Chelsea, I had friends that were going to Chelsea, Man United, Rangers, Celtic, signed up with Aberdeen. And I never got signed up until basically when I went full time YTS with Dundee. So it was different, you know, sort of different path to a lot of my friends. But it sort of made me want to really keep fighting and, you know, progress in a career in football. But I never played for any Scotland level teams until the under 21s. So I was definitely a late developer compared to some of, you know, my peers and some of the players I ended up playing with.
Now, in your early part of career, you were very versatile. Naturally, left-sided. You played at a kind of left wing back, left midfield, and before kind of settling. I know certainly when you signed for Rangers, we viewed you as a kind of central midfielder. But what position did you favour growing up? And talk us through how you ended up signing for Dundee and where what attracted you and what they saw as the future for you.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I did play left back a lot. Played centre half a little bit, and then, I'm naturally right sided, but I was always on the left for some reason. I don't know what managers, coaches like me cutting in, on my right. But I was always like a left back to start with, defender, and then ended up sort of becoming more of a central midfield player. Just due to sort of energy you get about the pitch and, strength and comfortable enough on the ball. So then when I was sort of getting closer to signing for Dundee, I was a centre midfield player, and Jim Duffy came up and watched a game, a cup final actually for my club side when I was at D side, and then a club called Glen, and he came up and watched a cup final, and it was me and against Jerry O'Driscoll's team, and Jerry O'Driscoll and I both signed for Dundee on the same day after that final. And from there, I was pretty much always a central midfielder for that first season at Dundee. And then I dropped back to centre half for the next season. And then after that, centre midfield my whole career after that, pretty much.
Now, there were some fantastic times at Dundee. Dundee were really bringing in some actually massive names when you really think about it, the likes of Julian Claudio Caniggia, Caballero, Nimzadze, Kipspaya, working under Bonetti as well. How exciting was that? I know it was exciting for the whole of Scottish football with some of them names. Even Ravanelli would come as well. What was it like in Dundee? What was it like in the dressing room and playing with them kind of guys?
It was amazing. It was great times, in terms of the football. On the weekend was probably some of the most enjoyable times I had playing with such good players. You just never knew what was going to happen. There was new people coming in all the time, and you just couldn't believe some of the players that Dundee were signing. It obviously didn't turn out particularly well in the end, but to get the chance to play with some of these players. I was central midfield partnership with Georgie. Nimzadze, who was an unbelievable player, and then obviously Claudio coming. Claudio Caniggia is still probably the best player I've ever played with. He was just next, like 5 levels above where we were, and it was great to see someone of that ability. And he was very humble as well, just a nice, chilled out guy, but certainly enjoyable times. Like roller coaster, just with so much that went on. But even with the Benettis, when they came in, the year before I'd played I think I'd played 35 out of 36 SPL games with Jockey Scott, and then he left, and then the Benettis, it's a clean slate and you have to start fighting again, and I didn't get a look in to start with, but then after that managed to work my way into the team and then really enjoyed it. The training was totally different cultures, really focused on tactics, not so much tactics and fitness, not so much on the enjoyable side of being a full-time pro in terms of the training, but then the games on the weekend were, as I say, some of the most enjoyable times I had in football with just how good players we had.
Yeah, just when you're saying that, I suppose I always Claudio Caniggia, sometimes I can't believe he even was at Rangers. He really was world class, wasn't he? He was incredible.
He was ridiculous. He came to Dundee when he was 33, so he must have been about 34 when he went to the Rangers. So if you could imagine him in his prime, he would have been outrageous, phenomenal. Because even then, he was still as I say, levels above players that I'd played with and seen. And it was a pleasure to see and pleasure to play with someone like that. I actually stuck up a really good relationship with him on the pitch, because obviously I was central midfielder and I used to get the ball to him, and he used to always make good runs for me, and always knew when I was making good runs for him, and I had a really good connection with him. And that was some of the most enjoyable moments in your career, when you're getting to play with someone like that. and just to really enjoy football as much as the fans are getting to watch it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as I said, I suppose I am a wee bit starstruck because you think about Caniggia and, you know, his friendship with likes of Maradona and that era and everything else. He really was incredible. But kind of moving forward with Dundee, I suppose the biggest thing that maybe happened to Dundee during that time was the 2003 Scottish Cup final. You obviously met Rangers in the final. Dundee played very well and arguably very unlucky that day. I remember particularly the first half, Dundee had quite a lot. But can you tell us about that run and the highlight of the final and how you played in it and what it meant for Dundee?
Yeah, listen, it was definitely one of the highlights in my career because obviously coming through YTS at Dundee, we got to the Youth Cup final when I was in the YTS, so I got to, you know, get to that, which was great. Played Hampden in that, didn't win that, and then we got to the Scottish Cup final against Rangers. So getting to that level and growing up in Scotland, playing in a Scottish Cup final, I remember the day. It was boiling hot day. We did pretty well in the first half. Barry Smith hit the post quite early, but just to be in that occasion as a kid growing up in Scotland and watching these games, and it was something special. All your family comes down to it. Obviously, we didn't win the game on the day, and Rangers managed to get over the line. But it was it's definitely one of the highlights of my career because it was just that occasion. Saturday, 3:00, Scottish Cup final. You know, last game of the season, and growing up watching them all so much as a kid, it was special to be able to play in them. In terms of my own performance, I played pretty well in the game. I can remember Jim Duff brought me off, and I was fuming because I never got brought off in games. I was always fit enough just to keep going. It was never, you know, I was always quite reliable and never really got brought off in games. But he brought me off that game. But I think it was just because I'd left Everton out. I was absolutely done. And yeah, it doesn't happen often. So I was devastated because I wanted to keep going and we still had the chance. But I understood looking back after because I'd nothing left in the tank. So it was great occasion, disappointing result on our side, but certainly a fantastic occasion. I loved it.
Yeah, it won't surprise many people that know me and listen to this that I got very sunburned that day, not having much hair or any at all really. So I was bright red. So I don't know how you guys did it on the pitch, running about as much as you did. But before we go on and we kind of talk about Rangers and things like that, without being too intrusive and being too bad, Dundee obviously suffered some major financial hardship. They kind of gamble, I suppose, to produce these players and do what they had done. The whole collapse of Setanta, false promises and things, they were in a bit of a hard time. How difficult was that for you and the players in the dressing room?
Oh, it was terrible, to be honest. I mean, like I said, I'd been at Dundee for it must have been about 8 years at this point. So I left school and been there for a good 8-9 years. And then that day when it all came of a head, like it was, you know, the club's in administration, and you know, Jim Duffy had to read out and list the names. And that day when he read out that names, that was finished, contract finished, you know, gone. So I'd been there with players like Jamie Langfield, who'd been with me since YTS. So he'd been there about 7-8 years. That day he was done. You know, he's packing his bags packing his boots in a black bag, and then finished. And my brother-in-law was there, who also had the same thing, contract cancelled. I was kept on because at that point they obviously seen me as a bit of an asset, which it turned out, you know, pretty well in terms of the club getting a little bit of money from me, which was good. But no, it was terrible. Like it was shocking what went on, and you know, you don't wish that on anyone. And it was tough times, especially seeing a lot of my mates just having contracts ripped up. It was not a nice thing.
Were you in two minds at that stage there, Gavin? Because you obviously had such an affinity with the club. I'm assuming you wanted to stay and help the club. But at that time, the best way that you could help Dundee was to move on. They also got a bit of money for you, and you then get your move to Rangers.
Yeah, in terms of that, you know, the timing was good. You know, so I think that happened in October, the administration, and obviously the transfer window opened in January, and I moved. So the club got a little bit of money for me, and obviously I got a move to a huge club in Rangers. So the timing was was good. It wasn't, as I say, it wasn't easy for that few months, just sort of getting through it and try to help the boys that were still there deal with the whole administration thing. But you've got to be as professional as you can. And like I say, it sort of turned out probably as well as it could have with the timing. It was only a few months later that I managed to get the move and the club got some money, which was really good.
So you then make the move to Rangers. Your debut comes at Parkhead. Unfortunately, a 3-0 defeat for Rangers, and not a good day for yourself either, off after half an hour or so. How tough was that to take? You make the move, so keen to get going, so keen to show the fans what you're all about, and it didn't quite work out that way, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was obviously really disappointing. I'd waited so long to get a really good move, and it turned out it was a great move in terms of going to a club like Rangers and the size of them. And you want to sort of hit the ground running. I'd had a niggly hamstring injury for about 5 weeks before, and I was sort of getting through it, and then missing one game, and then playing the next 2 games, and then missing another game. It just kept flaring up. But a big problem with me is I'd never had really any injuries at all. Nothing major in the 8, 9, 10 years I was at Dundee, from YCS all the way through. No major injuries, a couple of hamstrings, but nothing major. So I actually trained as soon as I signed for Rangers on I think it was the 1st, and then I trained for 2 days. I'd done my medical, everything fine, no issues. Trained for 2 days, and then you're hoping going. So that's why the manager played me, and you go into the game, and after 25 minutes, I just can remember it vividly. I remember making a bursting run into the box past Neil Lennon, and then I just felt my hamstring go again, tighten up. I was just it set the tone for the 3.5 years that I was there. Unfortunately, that's probably the way I look back at it. But you would never turn down the opportunity to play that game as a first game in the Old Firm. So disappointing start, of course, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
After a few weeks, obviously, out recovering from that, you do come back in, you play, scored against Dundee, you scored against Thistle. Did you feel that you had started to kind of establish yourself a bit more at Rangers heading into the end of that season? And you must have been really looking forward to the start of next season. Also, that didn't quite turn out as planned either, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it was. I think I missed 7 weeks with my hamstring just to make sure it was right. And then I think I played 11 games or got a good run and was starting to get a couple of goals and really enjoy myself. And then, yeah, I done my knee up at Tannadice, and that was just the worst thing ever, because I actually missed, I think it was 2 calendar years out injured with 2 really serious knee injuries, which was, something I'd never experienced. As I say, never been injured. And being at a club like Rangers, it was very frustrating. Was
that one of the ones that you knew straight away? Now, as soon as you felt the pain, you knew this could be a bad one, or did you know at the time that it was going to keep you out for as long a period?
Nah, not at all. Because, like I say, I've never really had any major injuries. Nothing even semi-major. I can remember when I'd done it, it was really sore for about a minute. And anyone that's done their ACL will tell you, for the first minute, it's agony. But then after that, it sort of goes away. And I didn't think there was anything wrong. And I can remember Big Stevie Thompson, you're going to be all right. Come on, keep going. And I was yeah, no worries. Wanting to keep going. And then Davy Henderson, the physio, obviously I was down getting treatment. He just checked my knee. He says, nah, get off. I was straight, all right, no worries. He obviously knows what he's talking about. And yeah, it flared up the next day, and then got the MRI on the Monday. And obviously, first of all, I hadn't ruptured it, I'd stretched it. So we tried to sort of rehab and get through it without an operation to get me back quicker. But that didn't work, unfortunately. And in hindsight, I should have just got the op straight away. But no idea how long it was going to keep me out. No, not at all. How
did you keep yourself going at that stage? So you obviously made the move to Rangers just a couple of months earlier, and all the excitement, all the anticipation that what could lie ahead in terms of winning cups and challenging for leagues, and to then find yourself out for that long. What was the key motivation? How did you manage to keep yourself going? Because I'm guessing there must have been some really tough times and some quite dark days during that long time.
Oh, definitely. It was really tough. I had a really good medical staff were great. with me at Murray Park, and the dock was great. The squads were great. The boys were great, even though didn't really feel as part of it as much as obviously you'd like to be. And missing out all that games, was probably the key, one of the sort of prime times in my whole career. So you're missing out at times like that as well. And obviously getting to a club like Rangers, and you get to a beautiful, training ground, and watching the boys train every day out in the pitch while you were in the gym for a couple of years, all in all was really tough. And you got to, I sort of learned to be really mentally strong. It's the first real challenge I'd had with injury in my whole career. And I just kept saying to myself, just got to get back, just got to keep going, keep pushing myself, and was very dedicated to getting back. Followed the programmes to a T, and was never any hassle for the physios. They tell me what to do, I done it. I was always dedicated to my craft in football and my whole career, so that wasn't that hard. But the hardest part was probably seeing the boys out in the training field and the games that they played, and winning titles and winning cups, and not being able to be a part of it in the squad was terrible. It was really tough to take, but you got to deal with it and get on with it. And that's the worst part of football. Injuries is terrible, but you just keep going. And one of the hardest parts is seeing the club signing. I think they must have signed about 5 or 6 centre midfielders in the time I was out injured, which big clubs do. So you always think, it's me further down the pecking order, and you got an even bigger battle to get back. But you just got to keep going and back yourself and try and get back.
So one of the major highs of FR Rangers during that time was obviously a Helicopter Sunday. Again, kind of mixed emotions for you, because you're obviously pleased for the boys that they managed to pull off this remarkable title win, but you having not played any part in it. How did you experience that day by Easter Road? Did you watch it in the house, and what's your memories of it?
Yeah, no, I was at the game, yeah, for sure. I mean, I went to every single game I was at. Even when I was out injured, I was at every game. It's not. I always like to I always tried to make myself still part of the squad as much as I could, as hard as it was at times. I used to go to every single game, and that day I was in the stand, and obviously we got the knowledge that there was a chance we were going to win it. So we all went down to trackside, and great memories in terms of being able to enjoy it with the squad. I mean, even though I'm not been playing with the squad, you're in the team, you're talking to the boys at lunch and dinner and all the time, and try to keep them going and through the hard times. So you're still part of it, but certainly didn't get to enjoy it as much as what I would have liked. But the celebrations after, and being part of the squad for that, and getting to see the joy that they experienced because they deserved to win the league was, something I always remember, and something, I look back on very fondly, even though I wasn't as part of it as much as what I would have liked.
You mentioned there also Rangers still signing players, and you potentially being moved further and further down the pecking order. When Paul Guen then came in as manager, did you see that as potentially like a fresh start for you, a chance for you to try and you could re-establish yourself and prove that you didn't have to bring guys in? And obviously Paul arrived with a big reputation from his time at Lyon, and was really highly regarded and quite sought after at that time. Did the players buy into that hype straight away, or the guys form their own judgments fairly quickly on a manager and what they can do and what they can't do?
Certainly with the appointment, I think everyone was quite excited. He was, obviously done very, very well where he was, and some of the biggest clubs in Europe were courting him and thinking about him as a potential next manager. And so I think when the club actually appointed him, I think the boys were excited. It was a fresh start for everyone. I was looking forward to it. I think with any manager in any club, you've got to make a really good impression really quickly, because you can lose boys straight away. And that's not just him, that's anyone. That's any manager at any level. You've got to be convincing the squad pretty soon, or else there'll be question marks. And that's just, I suppose, human nature and life. But yeah, no, I mean, as I say, I think when he was appointed, the boys were excited for sure.
That pre-season, also a lot of change, a lot of guys coming in. Paul Guen also trying to put his stamp on things. They have the incident on the way to South Africa with Fernando Rickson. Can you talk us through that particular flight?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I think it was such a long flight, and all the boys were like sort of sleeping. And the next minute, when we arrived, well, I think that somebody said like, oh, Fernando was like arguing with a stewardess or something like that, and then we arrived. So we arrive in South Africa, and then the next thing we know, he's getting sent back on a flight with one of the security guys, and we didn't know the full story, like what was going on. And then, that was him. He was gone. He was away. It was just so strange. Such a strange start to the trip. And it's, I think, like you say, it's Paul Guen trying to make a mark on the squad, and you've got to do that, I suppose, as well. But it was very interesting times for sure.
There was also some highs in terms of the European results that season, but domestically, the campaign unravels fairly quickly. Was there a feeling in the squad that this was going to go as badly as it ended up turning out to be in terms of the manager's future? Because I think things fairly snowballed quite quickly. I dare say once you're in that situation, it becomes quite hard to change it around, and so many issues just round about the squad at that time. Not an easy time for Andy.
No, it was difficult. I mean, certainly some of the domestic results were definitely not good enough. He tried to change a lot pretty quickly. He signed a lot of players, and it's difficult. It's such a big club. The expectation levels are huge, and you've got to win every game. And there's not many. Well, there's a few clubs in the world, but there's not many clubs in the world that you've got to win every single game. It's only the elite and the top clubs. So it was. It was difficult times, and it did unravel quite quickly towards I can't remember when it was, just after Christmas or whatever it was. It was definitely tough times. Some good European results, but domestically we had some really poor results, and especially at Ibrox, and that's never going to go down well with the fans or the hierarchy.
You obviously somewhat inadvertently find yourself at the centre of the whole thing now when the Guen versus Barry Ferguson thing kind of kicks off, and you find yourself being made captain. You can talk us through your emotions at that time and how that situation kind of unfolded. Did you feel a bit kind of used at that time, if you like, by Paul Guen?
You know what? I think it's actually a good way of putting it. When it happened, there was obviously shock within the playing squad, because obviously Fergie was the captain, and he was the Rangers captain, had been for years and been very successful. And then we found out he wasn't, and then Paul Le Guen pulled me in, and he says, "I'm making you captain." I was like, right, okay. I got on fine with Le Guen, and I get on fine with most managers, and I never had a problem with Le Guen at all. I'm normally a pretty dedicated pro. But the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues, was I wasn't playing regularly. So for him to do that, he respects my professionalism, fine, but I wasn't playing regular. So it makes it a pretty bizarre appointment in the first place, because then people are thinking, well, if you're making him captain, why is he not playing before? That sort of thing. And then leading into the game was probably, I think we played Motherwell away, and Boydie scored 1-0, and luckily we won. But the build up to that game is probably the worst experience, one of the worst experiences in football I've had, because it was just so much pressure, so unnecessary because of what had happened, and sort of thrust into the spotlight. You just want to play football. Don't get me wrong, very proud to have done it. But when he left, like maybe, I don't know, 6 days later or whatever it was, can't remember exactly, when he did leave the club, he never even called me or say, listen, sorry for putting you in that situation. He just left. So that's why to this day I'm still a bit annoyed at how he done it, and it's sort of a bit unnecessary with me, like putting me right in the middle of it. So it was a tricky situation for sure, and definitely not a good situation to be in at all. Not enjoyable in the slightest.
When the manager finally left, was there a sense of like a weight being lifted off your shoulders because of the position that you'd been in, but also a weight being lifted off the whole squad, also the group of guys that were against him, if you like, or the Edmorky Scottish guys? Was there a sense of the whole mood in the camp just being transformed when he left, and then that then being taken on when Walter comes back in?
Yeah, I think it had been quite clear that it couldn't carry on as it was. The results weren't good enough. performances weren't good enough. There was a bit, obviously, a disharmony because of that, because of the results. Nobody likes to be losing in games, and especially at a club like Rangers. So, it wasn't going to last long. And then, I think everyone happy to sort of see Walter coming back in and try to turn things around. And obviously with his record and his past, it was, I think the majority of the boys were excited. Yeah.
Can I just ask something at this point, Gavin? Obviously, you're put in a kind of really terrible position, and I think we all, as a support, knew it wasn't anything to do with you. I'm wondering, and something that the fans will wonder as well, from your point of view, did that cause you any issues in the dressing room? Because obviously you're put in this position. Barry's obviously in a terrible position as well. He'll have his allies, and we've seen the famous kind of 6 salute when Boyd scored and stuff like that. I mean, that must have been ridiculously tough on you through no fault of your own. Was there anything, did any comeback come to you from the dressing room?
No, to be honest. Well, they certainly didn't say it to my face or take it out with me. I think they obviously knew what was going on and sort of recognised the situation. As I say, I mean, I actually spoke to Fergie about it in the dressing room as he was going or after, and just says, listen, like, it's just so strange. And he's like, don't be silly. Obviously, it's what it is, and go and do it. Just go and do your best for the club and that. And it was, I was always pretty tight with most of the squad, so I never really had any issues with the actual playing squad at all. No, not at all.
Obviously, Walter then comes in as manager. How did you find working under him? And you think you fast forward a couple of months. Why did you feel the time was right to leave Rangers? Was there a sense of, I could not give it a go under Walter and be here a couple of years, and you also see what Rangers then go on to achieve under him? Was there any regret that you left too soon, or did you feel the time was maybe right for you?
Yeah, no, good question. Listen, I loved working with Walter. I think everyone paints him in such a good light. I'm one of his biggest fans. I loved working with him. I thought he was like treated you like a man, and he was very respectful. You were very respectful of him quite quickly, and I actually got on really well with him. And so my contract was up in the summer, but he said, listen, if you want to stay, then I'd love you. No, I'd love you to stay, but I think there'll be a place here for you if you want it. But I just said to him quite quickly, I says, listen, I've been here for 3.5 years. I've been injured for most of it. It's time for a fresh start for myself. And even though the club went on to be so successful under him, and it doesn't surprise me, it definitely felt like the right time to move on. And I'm glad I'd done it, because I had obviously some really good 4 years down in Cardiff. And the most important thing was just playing. It was so strange, because in my whole career, like before Rangers and after Rangers, I've never really had any injuries, like at all. Nothing major at all. And it was just at Rangers I had my 2 really bad injuries. So that was really frustrating looking back. But yeah, it was the right time for me to move on for sure.
As you touched on slightly there, Gavin, you had, 4 great years down at Cardiff. As they kind of came more towards prominence where they are now, because Cardiff are kind of, I suppose, even though they are in Championship, they are looked upon as Premiership level and things like that. And you were part of that kind of uptake for them, which included a magnificent FA Cup final run where you played Portsmouth and things like that. Must have been an amazing run to go all the way to the FA Cup final and things. Can you talk us through your kind of highlights at Cardiff, your FA Cup run, and kind of go through that with us?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it was such a good time. I think in the first year, one of the biggest things for me was just getting back to playing football. And there's so many games down there. And I think in the first year I played 55 games, and that was 50 starts and 5 subs. And then, if you look back, that's in one season. So in the 3.5 years at Rangers, I think I played, like, if I had the same amount of appearances in that time, so that was one of the good things that I really enjoyed, just getting back to playing football and being part of a squad and being on the pitch. And And obviously the first year I went there, we got to the FA Cup final. So, yeah, you look back on and thinking, was I right to move? I think it worked out right for me in terms of the time to go and play football. We had some great times down at Cardiff. The first year we got FA Cup final. We missed out in the playoffs by, I think, a goal maybe. And then we got to the playoff semi-final. We were always there or thereabouts. We were always one of the top teams in the championship, and it's a tough league. But I love just seeing new stadiums, some huge clubs in that league, and obviously having the FA Cup final run. So, you're getting to play Premier League teams, and it was 4 great years I look back on, really, really fondly.
Is it a wee bit maybe of redemption? I'm not sure that's maybe the right word, but you did have such a time at Rangers with injuries, and did you take such a sense of satisfaction to say, well, look, I can do this, and and I kind of, I don't know, like a pat not a pat in the back, but you know what I'm trying to say? It's just like,
I know yeah.
This is all behind me now, and I'm proving it at the top level that I can do it. Was there a sense of that for you?
Definitely. Definitely. It's more like that was a huge thing, and that playing that 55 games in that first season is like, that's something that's, I feel an achievement with that because of how bad the years leading up to that had been. And like I say before, Rangers I played all the time. So it was getting back to that level. I was involved with Scotland again. We're getting to FA Cup finals, and it was just all the hard work that had been put in during the injuries, like coming to fruition, and just getting back to enjoying football, and just a fresh start. Like I say, with new stadiums, playing everyone just twice a season was nice, and his games like every week down there. It's Saturday, Tuesday, every all the time. So yeah, it was really good, and I really enjoyed it, and it was just gave me the belief again that I was back to being basically a football player. I missed out on that for a couple of years. Yeah,
definitely. One thing maybe ask you, we commented on like Claudio Caniggia and at Dundee, maybe Barry Ferguson, Rangers, and things like that. Who was the standout at Cardiff who you loved playing with, and the kind of big players that we would know from down there?
Yeah, no, we had some great players down there. I mean, the first year I went there, they signed Robbie Fowler, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Trevor Sinclair. That was in the 3 of the boys in the squad. We had Steve McPhail, but Stevie Thompson was in the squad, Kevin McNaughton, obviously Davy Marshall came. Chris Burke, one of my wee mate, came down as well from Rangers as well. So yeah, we had some amazing players, and one of the best players, obviously Peter Whittingham, unfortunately passed away recently. He was an unbelievable player. He was very, very good ability, a very laid back guy, but yeah, a wand of a left foot, and he was great to play with. And I played in the middle of the park with Steve McPhail, who'd been at Leeds obviously, and played for Republic of Ireland. One of the young guns sort of pushing through was Aaron Ramsey, and he's the best young player I've seen by a mile, like a country mile. He's the best young player I've ever seen.
Yeah, there's certainly some massive household names. You mentioned Chris Burke there. Chris Burke would obviously play a huge part in the Crown Cup win for Scotland. And I know maybe people kind of scoffed at it at the time, but it's certainly a huge achievement. Talk us through that, your involvement in that, the results out there, and how much you enjoyed it and what it meant to you.
Yeah, it's funny you ask. It's still, again, something it's really like, I look back on with like so much like enjoyment. I'd been out injured. I'd managed to get myself back in the Rangers team towards the end of the season. I think it'd been Alec McLeish's last game, I think, at Ibrox against Hearts, and they played really well. Walter was in the stand, and then I managed to get selected or like brought in as a replacement or whatever, and I was just like, yeah, 100%, I'm going, definitely. And I absolutely loved it. We were out there for a few days. We had a really good tournament. We'd done well. Obviously, Berkey scoring, Boydie scoring, and then we get the ended up getting the draw against Japan, I think it was, to win that cup. So yeah, it's, people look back on it and, it was only the Kinnan Cup. Yeah, I get that side of it, but it's still something, you look back on. We're celebrating with a trophy, and that has not happened for a while for Scotland, so it was good fun. And just for me to be back on that stage was huge. And then, yeah, I was just delighted, as I say, to be back on that stage playing for Scotland, because I'd missed it for a good while. So it was it was great for me. I loved it.
Yeah, people, I mean, obviously it maybe didn't get the credit or things it deserved, but to win anything with your country must certainly have been a highlight, especially, as you said, getting back to it. I remember here it was on at crazy times and things like that, so I remember Chrissy Burke he flourished out there, if I remember rightly. That was his kind of breakthrough towards Scotland, if my memory serves me correct. But moving on for yourself, Gavin, you would go back to Dundee, and then you would end up at Aberdeen, and then back to Dundee. What can you tell us about your kind of the close of your career in Scotland before your move out to Australia, and your times with Dundee? I'm assuming growing up in Aberdeen, it must have been a great kind of thrill to finally play for the club and things like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So it kind of, I came back, so the end of my career at Cardiff, so I'd been there 4 years. My contract was up, and then we'd had, our twins were born in Cardiff, so we weren't sure what to do in terms of, do we stay close to where they are? They were in school, and, I was just sort of hanging on to see what moves came about, and nothing really came about. I had a chance to go to South London, one of the lower League 2 teams, and then League 1 team down south as well. But it wasn't really appealing. And then I've been training with Cardiff just to keep fit. But then Barry Smith, who was obviously a really good friend of mine, Dundee the first time, was now the manager at Dundee, and he says, just come up and, get back to enjoying playing football. It got to the October time. And I was like, yeah, come on, let's just do it. So I went on a short-term deal there just to the January, and done really well. I think I scored 4 goals in 12 games, and then got that move to Aberdeen. And yeah, like you say, I grew up in Aberdeen, not far from the stadium. My dad used to take me to the games, and getting to play for them was great. But I think the biggest thing, because I was coming towards the end of my career, was the fact that my mum and dad could come and watch games again. Obviously, I'd been a good bit further away down in Cardiff. And also we managed to move back to Aberdeen just for a little bit to let the family see the twins before we emigrated. So yeah, it sort of worked out right. And then I was there for sort of 18 months, and that was great. And then I finished my career at Dundee, which was just the ideal sort of way to finish. It was perfect.
Was the move out to Australia always something that you'd fancied from a lifestyle point of view, Gavin? Had it always been in your mind to emigrate out there, and the football then just was the kind of mechanism that took you there?
Yeah, definitely. It was always. So my wife's Aussie. My wife's Australian, so I met my wife in 2001. So it was always in the back burner that, we were probably going to come here once I finished playing football, which happened. I finished with Dundee in May 2014, and we emigrated in September 2014. It'd always been on the cards. I actually used to come to Australia every off-season to see the in-laws and take the twins back here to see the in-laws. So that was always happening. And then just the way it sort of finished at Dundee, we won the title on the last day. I actually had another year's contract because we got promoted back to the Premiership. But I was just like, nah, that's me done. It's the perfect way to sort of bow out. And then, yeah, we moved not long after, and we've sort of been here since. And a couple of, a change in career, working full-time in an office, recruitment, coaching part-time, still keep my toe in the football. So, yeah, no, it's been great. It's been really enjoyable.
You see yourself taking up the coaching and the management full-time, or is that just something you'll always kind of do on the side? Like, do you fancy forging yourself? Like, do you fancy forging your career if yourself as a boss in your own right? Or
you know what? Listen, football's been, since day one in my life, and certainly professional life. So if that opportunity ever arose, then 100% I'd be very interested in it, because it's just, that's my life, that's what I've done. It's what I've known since leaving school. I'm enjoying the challenges of changing career, and I've always had quite an open mind to doing that, which is good. But football is obviously first love. I've had really good experience with the part-time coaching. So I was assistant coach and player, and then I was head coach, player coach at the same time. And for the last 3 years, I've just been head coach, so just like no playing, just coaching. And that's been really good in terms of getting experience. So dealing with budgets, dealing with agents. It's like semi-pro level here. So we're dealing with agents, picking squads, budgets for the squads, formations, all that sort of stuff. So it's like, being a coach, but in a sort of microcosm, like you're getting really good experience. And I've done that for 5 years now since I've been here. So I think I've had good experience at it and ready to go to that next level. But it's difficult because there's only like 11 or 12 full-time positions here out here in Australia. If I'd stayed in Scotland once I retired, then 100% I would definitely have tried to go full-time as a manager or as a coach for sure to start with, and wait for that chance. And whether it comes up now from going on in life, I'm not sure. It'd be great if it did. I would always be open to it and set a look to it. But it was sort of, it's one of them that we'll just have to sort of wait and see what happens.
Gavin, final one from us, and I thank you for the time you've taken. We like to ask everybody their kind of highlights of their time at Rangers at the end. You obviously had a very difficult one, and they've ranged from, a funny story with Jimmy Bale, or even Stuart McCall said the proudest moment was walking in of Ibrox. What can you kind of tell the Rangers support that will listen to this? And then secondly, I'd maybe ask you, what was your kind of overall career highlights? Because you did have some massive moments, FA Cup, Scottish Cup and things like that. Can you share them with us?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, for Rangers, obviously, I think one of the biggest things was, I grew up in Scotland and knew it was a big club. What I didn't realise was just how big a club it was. It's like a huge, huge club and global fan base and expectation levels on you. The fans and that were great with me. It was a difficult time, certainly there's no getting away from that. It didn't really work out the way anyone had hoped. But getting to play at Ibrox, which was one of my favourite stadiums to play in, as a home ground, it's just phenomenal. It's still one of the best stadiums in the world. I love it. It's getting to play with some of the players that were there, and to play with the De Boer twins and Shota, Mikey Moles, Stefan Kloss. I mean, it was just, it was phenomenal. It was great times, and look back on that side of it really, really well. But unfortunately, as I say, disappointment tinges that because it didn't go the way I would have liked, and I'm sure the fans would have liked as well. But honoured to have played for such a huge club. Highlights of my career would be obviously Scottish Cup final with Dundee, getting a move to Rangers, FA Cup final with Cardiff, playoff final with Cardiff. But the pinnacle for me has always been Scotland, getting to play for Scotland, and that nothing will ever beat that. Being able to play for your national team and be picked in that squad was definitely the highlight of my career.
Gavin, I'd just like to thank you for joining us on the 4LadsHadADream podcast. You've given up your time. You're obviously out in Australia with your family, and we wish you all the best at this time. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks very much for having me on.
So a fantastic insight, and we thank Gavin Rae for joining us. We've had some great guests on the podcast, but I'm sure you'll agree, Chris, Gavin spoke really well about some difficult times at Rangers.
I said, we've had quite a number of guys on over the last couple of weeks talking about big cup wins and big league wins, and Gavin's stories are a very different one. He didn't have the success at Rangers that he hoped to have when he first joined, but clearly somebody that still enjoyed his time at the club. And it was good to see him go on and having the career that he did do. A really good professional, a really good player down south, and obviously nice to see him make a living in life for himself out in Australia now. So good to hear that he's doing well, and really thankful that he came on and shared a bit of time with us.
Yeah, it was a brilliant story, and I'm really looking forward to getting people's feedback from this one. We like to try and bring you lots of different stories, and Gavin is one I'm certainly glad we've covered. Before we finish, as usual, I'd like to just thank our our hosts, Stuart Franklin and Gersnet, who do great work with this. They help us put it all on Spotify and things where you can find this. So it's a huge thank you to them. Also to our sponsors, Custom Kitchens Factory, Ali Dick and the boys over there, and also KJM Printing, who are a 3D printing order company. They make up all sorts of badges. They've got the 4LadsHadADream Rangers badges and things on there. And they're non-profit, as are ourselves. We like to support Rangers Youth Development Company, where we've helped to raise, myself and Chris and others involved have helped to raise just under £13,000. Obviously our fundraising's at the stop at the moment, but when we resume, we'll try and help out as much as we can. It's a huge thank you, as I said, for joining us on the 4Lads podcast. Please go onto the internet, go onto 4LadsHadADream on Twitter, or you can find us 4LadsHadADream.blog. Send us an email, let us know who you would maybe like to hear from, and we'll try our best to get them on. Until next time, all that's left to be said, as usual, thanks for joining us. Ignore the nonsense, the irrelevant and the noise.
Loyalty to Rangers is what binds us, and together we are stronger. Launching for the 2021 season, the MyGers membership programme is a new way to get even closer to the club you love. It's the one place where you can access benefits like ticketing priority, club discounts, and exclusive competitions and experiences. There's even a limited edition welcome gift when you join. Visit rangers.co.uk/MyGers to join today. Always Rangers, always loyal, always rewarded.